Now, what we want to focus on is a memory or a feeling in the body that disturbs you in some way from a movie. And you said there was the movie The Green Mile that you can't even watch, but you've heard bits about it.
Yeah.
That you just like go, no, I can't go there.
Yes.
So is there a particular part of the movie that you've been told about?
There's a part I know which happens as the big giant gets put in the electric chair.
Yes. No, he
I
doesn't.
think that's what
He
happens. That's
doesn't.
what I've created.
No,
that happens.
he doesn't. Does he?
So
Yeah, he
At
does.
the end,
Yeah.
at the end, does
yeah,
it?
sure.
He does.
Okay, yeah, because there's another guy first. Yep.
Yeah.
So the electric
Yeah.
chair bit,
Yes.
imagining him in the electric chair.
Yes.
So where do you feel that in your body? Yeah, keep tapping. Even though I've got this imagined feeling in my body, when I imagine seeing him in the electric chair, I accept myself deeply and completely. Open your eyes and look at me. Can't even open your eyes. Open your eyes and look at me. Okay. Forcing the motion. Keep tapping. Even though I've got this imagined feeling, I can't imagine what it'd be like in the electric chair.
Even though I've got this imagined feeling, I can't imagine what it would be like in the electric chair.
I accept myself deeply and completely.
I accept myself deeply and completely.
I need tissues. I can't watch the movie.
I can't watch the movie.
Even thinking about it brings up all this emotion.
Even thinking about it brings up all this emotion.
I accept myself
And I accept myself
and all my responses.
and all my responses.
I can't even think about it.
I can't even think about it.
Imagining him
Imagining him
being in the electric chair.
being in the electric chair.
All the emotions and responses in my body.
All the emotions and responses in my body.
All my fear.
All my fear.
I want to dissolve it.
I want to dissolve it.
Wherever it comes from.
Wherever it comes from.
Imagining him being in the electric chair.
Imagining anyone being in the electric chair.
I haven't even seen the
I
movie,
haven't seen the movie.
but imagining it brings up all this emotional
Imagining
response.
It brings up all this emotional response.
And I want to dissolve it
And I want to dissolve it.
all the way back to its origin,
All the way back to its origin.
wherever that comes from.
Wherever that comes from.
All the feelings in my body. What's coming up?
All the feelings in my body.
All this emotion. What's the emotion?
Fear.
Fear. See how I didn't even get to ask her that first, or the suds, because it was just all there. We just needed to get tapping. All this fear.
All this fear.
Even though I've got all this fear in my
I've
body,
got all this fear in my body.
I accept myself
I accept myself
and my body.
and my body.
I accept myself deeply and completely.
I accept myself deeply and completely.
Even though I've got all this fear
Even though I've got all this fear
in my body,
in my body.
when I think about anyone being in the electric chair,
When I think about anyone being in the electric chair,
I want to release it and let it go.
I want to release it and let it go.
All the way back to its origin.
All the way back to its origin.
Imagining someone being in the electric chair.
Imagining someone in the electric chair.
I can feel the fear in my whole body. Keep tapping. All the fear wherever it comes from.
All the fear wherever it comes from.
Dissolving it all the way back to its origin.
Dissolving it all the way back to its origin.
Anyone being in the electric chair.
Anyone being in the electric chair.
All that fear.
All that fear.
Dissolving it all the way back to its origin. All the fear in my body.
All the fear in my body.
It's overwhelming.
It's overwhelming.
All the fear in my body.
All the fear in my body.
I want to dissolve it.
I want to dissolve it.
Imagining anyone being in the electric chair.
Imagining anyone being in the electric chair.
All the fear in my body.
All the fear in my body.
No wonder I can't watch that.
No wonder I can't watch that.
I want to dissolve it.
I want to dissolve it.
All that fear in my body.
All that fear in my body.
Where's the fear in your body?
It's in my head.
All the fear 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 around my head.
When I imagine
When I imagine
someone being electric
someone being
Electric.
in the electric
chair.
chair.
Yeah. Electrified.
Someone being electrified.
Someone being put to death.
Someone being put to death.
All the fear in my body.
All the fear in my body.
Dissolving it and letting it go.
Dissolving and letting it go.
All the way back to its origin.
All the way back to its origin.
Anyone being in an electric chair.
Anyone being in an electric chair.
Imagining them in an electric chair.
Imagining them in an electric chair.
fear around my head,
all the fear around my head,
all the fear in my head,
all the fear in my head,
processing and releasing it.
processing and releasing it.
It doesn't belong trapped in my body,
It doesn't belong trapped in my body,
and I want to release it.
and I want to release it.
I want to let it go.
I want to let it go.
Even when I imagine someone in the electric chair,
Even when I imagine someone in the electric chair,
dissolving it all the way back to its origin,
dissolving it all the way back to its origin,
all my reactions
all my reactions
to someone being in the electric
to
chair,
someone being in the electric chair,
dissolving the fear
dissolving the fear
all the way back to its origin.
all the way back to its origin.
Deep breath. And more tissues.
That's all right.
So there was a bit of a release then. So when you think about or imagine now someone being in an electric chair, or that big giant man in the Green Mile that you've never watched, imagining him being in the electric chair, how's the fear in your body? Has that come down?
It's come down.
So we didn't get an out of 10, but I imagine it was pretty much 10. So you don't often need to ask that when you can see it. It's like you need to get tapping straight away. Yep. So it's come down a long way.
It's come down. Yeah.
So can you imagine watching that movie and him sitting in the electric chair and being electrocuted?
I can imagine it more easily.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And is there a response in your body when you imagine that?
There is, but nowhere near as severe.
So what's the response that's left?
The response is a little twang like
Mhm.
in my throat.
Okay. Even though
Even though
there's a remaining twang in my throat
there's a remaining twang in my throat.
when I imagine that big giant guy
When I imagine that big giant guy
in the electric chair
in the electric chair
being electrocuted.
being electrocuted,
I accept myself
I accept myself
and the twang in my throat,
and the twang in my throat,
and I ask my body to process and release it.
and I ask my body to process and release it.
Even though I've got this little twang in my throat,
Even though I've got this little twang in my throat,
when I think about him being electrocuted
when I think about him being electrocuted
in the electric chair,
in the electric chair,
I accept myself
I accept myself
and my body
and my body,
and ask my body to release it.
and ask my body to release it.
This remaining little twang in my throat,
This remaining little twang in my throat,
processing and releasing it.
processing and releasing it.
This remaining little twang in my throat
This remaining little twang in my throat,
when I imagine
when I imagine
seeing him in the electric chair,
seeing him in the electric chair,
being electrocuted.
being electrocuted,
That big giant guy being electrocuted,
being electrocuted,
dissolving all my reactions in my body.
dissolving all my reactions in my body.
That little twang in my throat,
That little twang in my throat,
processing and releasing it
processing and releasing it.
when I imagine seeing him being electrocuted.
When I imagine seeing him being electrocuted.
Okay, so just come back. So does that come all the way down? How's your throat?
Yeah.
Alright, so let's go to the aspect of hearing him being electrocuted. So even though I could imagine hearing him being electrocuted,
I could imagine hearing him being electrocuted.
what's coming up? I accept myself deeply and completely. So see how we could have left it at that? Keep going. I can imagine hearing him being electrocuted.
I can imagine hearing him being electrocuted.
I accept myself deeply and
I accept
completely.
myself deeply and completely.
Processing and releasing hearing him being electrocuted.
Processing and releasing hearing anybody being electrocuted.
Processing my reactions,
Processing my reactions,
my fear,
my fear,
out of my body.
out of my body.
When I imagine hearing him
When I imagine hearing him
or anybody
or anybody
being electrocuted
being electrocuted
in the electric chair,
in the electric chair.
all my reactions,
All my reactions.
processing and releasing
Processing and releasing
all my fear,
all my fear,
all my body's reactions.
all my body's reactions.
When I imagine hearing him being
When
electrocuted,
I imagine hearing him being electrocuted,
hearing anyone being electrocuted,
hearing anybody being electrocuted,
smelling them being electrocuted,
smelling them being electrocuted,
all the aspects of somebody being electrocuted,
all the aspects of somebody being electrocuted,
seeing, hearing, smelling,
seeing, hearing, smelling,
Processing and releasing it from my body.
Processing and releasing it from my body.
All the way back to its origin,
All the way back to its origin,
wherever it began.
wherever it began.
Processing and releasing it.
Processing and releasing it.
All the reactions in my body.
All the reactions in my body.
And I imagine hearing him
When I imagine hearing him
or anyone
or anyone
being
being
electrocuted
electrocuted
in the electric chair.
in the electric chair.
Seeing them,
Seeing them,
hearing them,
hearing them,
smelling it.
smelling it.
Processing and releasing my reactions.
Processing and releasing my reactions.
I want to feel peace.
I want to feel peace.
Even when I imagine seeing, hearing, smelling that.
Even when I imagine seeing, hearing, smelling that.
Or watching the Green Mile.
Or watching the Green Mile.
Deep breath. Okay. So how does that feel in your body now if you imagine sitting in front of the telly watching that part of the Green Mile?
Feels okay.
So see how, yeah, that's good. So see how it was about hearing it, seeing it first, and then the aspect of hearing brought it all up again. So then I brought in the aspect of smell, because in case you were there in a past life in some way, shape or form, there would be a trigger for smelling it as well.
I felt like an anger when you said about the smelling, but then as I just,
It processed as we were tapping.
yeah.
Yep. So that's why it's important to bring in all the aspects and not just leave it, at that. So you could have then gone and watched the Green Mile and be able to see it, but then as soon as you heard him screaming or something,
Yeah.
it would have triggered you.
Yeah.
And, who knows, having not even watched it but triggered you, for me, that says it's come from past life. But you don't make that assumption. You just treat exactly what's there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I suppose with a bit of a chat beforehand, we probably, it's a theme with any injustice really, or a perceived injustice, and
Yep.
typically against African or Black American.
Okay, so there's another aspect. So even though there's that injustice
There's an injustice
or perceived
or
injustice
perceived injustice
against any Black American
against any Black American or
African that I can feel in my body,
that I can feel in my
that I want to release all the way back to its origin. Yep. So see how we just need to keep processing all the bits, all my reactions in my body. I want to process and release. Keep tapping. Even though I hate to think of injustice
Even though I hate to think of injustice
against any Black American,
against any
African,
Black American or African person.
I accept myself and all my reactions.
I accept myself and all my reactions.
And I want to dissolve them all the way back to their
And
origin,
I want to dissolve them all the way back to
wherever they began.
wherever they began.
Even though I've got this theme,
Even though I've got this thing,
I hate injustice,
I hate injustice,
especially against any Black American, African.
especially against any Black American.
I accept myself
I accept myself
and all my
and
reactions,
all my reactions,
and I'm asking my body to process and release
and
them.
I'm asking my body to process and release them.
All my reactions.
All my reactions.
It's been a theme.
It's been a thing.
I can't stand
I
injustice,
can't stand injustice.
especially to Black Americans or Africans.
It's turned into any person deep injustice.
Deep injustice to anyone.
Deep injustice to anyone.
I can't stand it.
I can't stand it.
Deep injustice.
Deep injustice.
It's so unfair.
It's so unfair.
All that deep injustice.
All that deep injustice.
It's been a theme in my life.
It's been a theme in my life.
No wonder I work with youth.
No one regrets me.
The deep injustice.
The deep injustice.
It's been a theme in my
It's
life.
been a theme in my life.
I can't stand deep
I
injustice.
can't stand deep injustice.
It's so unfair.
It's so unfair.
Processing and releasing it.
Processing and releasing that.
All my
All
reactions.
my reactions.
All the way back to their origins.
All the way back to their origins.
I can't serve those who have been unjust unjustly treated
I can't serve those who've been unjustly treated
if I'm triggered
if I'm triggered
and I want to process and release it.
and I want to process and release it.
All my reactions
All my reactions
to people being treated unjustly,
to people being treated unjustly,
unfairly,
unfairly,
especially Black and African Americans,
especially Black Africans,
anyone who's unjustly treated,
who's unjustly treated,
like the big black giant guy
like the big giant with the green line
in the Green Mile who was electrocuted,
who was electrocuted,
releasing all my reactions.
releasing all my reactions.
They don't serve me,
They don't serve me,
and I want to release them from my body.
and I want to release them from my body
To anyone who's treated unjustly,
to anyone who's treated unjustly,
so I can serve them
so I can serve them
without being triggered,
without being triggered,
releasing it from my body.
releasing it from my body.
See how we got to the underlying core issue behind it all? Yeah? So it's about still asking questions and what else is there, and you know, just naturally offered that up. It's been a theme through my life, yeah. See what happens when we just do a disturbing scene from a movie?
haven't even watched. Crazy. Awesome.
Yeah. But it's about, tuning into that and allowing it to be processed and you know, how much better can you serve people who have been treated unfairly now that you're not triggered by it?
Yeah.
Maybe it doesn't have to be an all-consuming drive that you have, but more something that you can do without you have to.
Yeah. Feeling more effective in that process rather
Yes.
than just like I'm fighting against something
Yes.
that shouldn't be happening or
Yeah.
is so unfair and all
Yeah,
of that.
because you won't be triggered, you won't be in survival mode for it. You won't be angry so much about it. So the anger, now when we tune into the anger, is that still there?
No.
Good. So see how more effective you can be when you're not angry about it. You're disconnecting from triggering from it, and you can be more effective in your cognitive brain, in your whole body, in your whole energy for them.
It's a more peaceful, distanced kind of veil, but and effective.
Effective instead of triggered and angry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Awesome.
It's gnarly.
Mm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.